This has been a week mostly taken up by the news of a new skipping option from Spotify. Whilst almost everyone within the podcast industry is seemingly talking about this, some people, such as Elsie, Escobar and Walch, have included it in their latest episode of In and Around Podcasting, but still made the recent Honda Accords, AMP Accords, a subject to return to. Kudos to them as always. Also, Facebook are facing, pun not intended, their own serious legal issues, so maybe it is time, as mentioned last week, to see the return of MySpace. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this is Pods Like Us Chronicles. On Tuesday the 4th of August, I was running late with the Podbites newsletter, and in so doing placed a breaking news item into that issue after James Cridland, the managing editor of PodNews, announced the skip forward option for premium users on Spotify. Now, for full transparency, I recorded a reaction to this on Tuesday, which was to be added to this episode of Chronicles. Then I recorded the piece again on Thursday, twice, after more had come up about it. Then on Saturday, again, 2 more recordings for this section that you are listening to now. All this when initially my idea was to just say something about it in the rundown. And maybe I should have stuck with that, because this has been a bit of a bee in my bonnet to get this done. None of that felt right though, and after thinking about it, I believe that I finally understand why. I had asked an LLM/AI assistant to give me some notes to base the piece on, as I wanted to sound like a professional, bypassing the fact that I am, as I say in every intro, Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv. I am never going to be James Cridland, Gavin Gaddis, Tom Webster, Elsie Escobar, Neil Veglio, or any of those people. And, if truth be told, I shouldn't try to be. Because Pods Like Us is a part of me, most of the time, with the guest, of course, being the other part. Now, I will try to be quick to get the point across. There is a sound that every podcaster hates to hear: a listener pressing the skip button on ads, especially if you get paid for those. For podcast listeners, skipping an advert can be so satisfying. They are halfway through an episode when suddenly the host starts talking about a mattress that they bought, tell you where they got it from, and how you too could get the same mattress with one heck of a discount. The same goes for food delivery services, online banking, or, God forbid, a podcasting service offering a great deal that could save you a pretty penny. Who would want that? Now though, with a couple of taps, you are back to the programme that you actually wanted to hear faster than you can answer the question, what's the security code on the back of your card? That is great for listeners, but not for podcasters who are getting returns from advertising in their shows. So what do we know? Well, Spotify has been experimenting with different answers to the same question for several years, with one of their most interesting ideas, in quotes, most interesting, being introduced by Spotify back in 2018 called Active Media, or AM for short. Who doesn't like a good acronym? This allowed users on Spotify's free tier, pay attention, free tier, in Australia to skip audio and video advertisements as often as they liked. Now, I can understand Spotify wanting to provide a service for their paying subscribers, but as James Cridland mentioned in PodNews Weekly Review, it's like two different departments working against each other. The sales team are working to get the advertising in, and the people in the room across the hall are creating a way for the advertising they're getting paid for to not be heard. It has the potential to be a whole dump truck full of worms, never mind a can. I would suggest that people listen to a special episode of Podmastery that is coming out on Monday the 10th of August, because Neil Veglio said in another podcast episode this past Friday, the 7th of August, that he will have a way to go forward with this that doesn't mean removing your shows from a service that holds around 75% of listeners across the world, and potentially could lose you more than it would Spotify if you left the service or stopped putting your shows on there. Coming up is an announcement from my friends Bry and Si from Sodajerker on Songwriting about something for all songwriters or anyone wanting to become a songwriter. You really won't want to miss this.
Hi folks, this is just a break to the usual programming for a few minutes because we've got something to tell you about.
On Friday, the 4th of September 2026, we're doing a workshop at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. It's called the Sodajerker Songwriting Lab, and it's going to be a bit special.
It's a one-day short course created with Birmingham City University, and we've got two very special guests. Ivor Novello-winning songwriter Sacha Skarbek, who you'll know from his work with Adele, James Blunt, Miley Cyrus and Lana Del Rey, and songwriter, producer and session musician Ben Parker, one half of the transatlantic folk duo Sons of Town Hall, a million-selling author of music instruction books and co-founder with Sacha of the Skarbek Songwriting Academy.
The Skarbek Songwriting Academy has led songwriting events at Coco in London and at Ocean Way Studios in Nashville, and now they're bringing all of their wisdom to us in Birmingham for one day only. All the details are at sodajerker.com/lab if you want to skip straight there, but if you want to stay with us for a moment, we'll tell you exactly what's happening on the day.
So you'll come to the Conservatoire in the morning for a 10 a.m. start. We'll begin with a live Sodajerker interview in the studios there with Sacha and Ben to get you inspired. You spend an hour hearing how these two think about writing, and then you go straight into doing it.
You'll write in small groups working in the Conservatoire studios, and Sacha and Ben will move between the groups while you're working, so you're getting guidance and feedback as the thing takes shape and not a verdict at the end.
Then late afternoon, we'll come back together, hear where everyone's got to, any final feedback, and wrap it up. Lunch and refreshments are in there too. It's a full day, should be done by about 6 p.m.
The lab is open to anyone of any age who writes songs. You don't have to be a student. You don't need to have released anything or have a publisher or know what a split sheet is. Sounds painful, I know that.
If you write songs and you'd like a day of doing it under the guidance and mentorship of people who do it for a living, that's the whole entry requirement.
And it's deliberately a small group. You're not sitting in a lecture theatre watching someone at a piano 400 feet away.
So Friday the 4th of September, Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, about a 15-minute walk from Birmingham New Street Station.
Places are very limited and they are going, so if it sounds like your kind of day, don't sit on it, potsy.
Everything's at sodajerker.com/lab. That's sodajerker.com/lab. And you can click the enroll button to pay for a place at the lab via Birmingham City University's short course page. The link's also in the description, so you can find it there too.
And if you know somebody who'd love to participate, a writing partner or someone in your band, let them know.
That's all from us. We're having a bit of a season break after Phil Collins while the weather's nice, but normal service resumes with the next episode in August.
Simon, how many times do I have to tell you we don't do seasons? But do come to Birmingham, it'll be a great day.
sodajerker.com/lab. See you there.
Early on Friday, the 7th of August 2026, while I was on my morning walk actually, so UK time, it was announced that Meta had been handed another enormous financial blow in the United States after a New Mexico judge ordered the company to pay $567 million over the harm its social media platforms are alleged to have caused to children and teenagers. Now, that isn't the beginning or the end of the story, by the way, because earlier in the same court case, they were also ordered to pay out $375 million in civil penalties. The latest ruling is effectively the second stage of the case, dealing with how the damage should be addressed. This means then that the latest judgment brings Meta's total financial liability in this particular case to $942 million. The case in question is centered on Facebook and Instagram, with the way that young people use those platforms. New Mexico is arguing that Meta knows about the risk that its services pose to children, but are failing to do enough to protect them. And this is where the $567 million comes in. The majority of that money, around $420 million, is intended for treatment services for young people. The remainder will go towards awareness campaigns, prevention, screening, and other measures designed to tackle the effects of social media use over the next 5 years, according to an article in AP News. But the judge hasn't simply reached for the calculator and sent Meta a very large bill. This ruling also requires changes to the way that Facebook and Instagram operate. And among those measures are stronger age verification systems, educational information about safety features, and mechanisms intended to prevent children under the age of 13 from using the platforms altogether. Meta has also been ordered to delete data collected from users who are under that age. Well, if they're not allowed on there anymore, that information should not be on there anyway, if anybody is under 13 years of age, quite frankly. The underlying issue, though, is much bigger than Facebook or Instagram. For many years, social media companies have argued that they provide platforms for people to communicate, share information, and entertain themselves, whilst ignoring the increased questioning of what happens when those same platforms are deliberately designed to keep people engaged for as long as possible. The case in New Mexico alleges that Meta's recommendation systems could direct young users towards harmful material, and that the company had not done enough to prevent exploitation and other dangers on its platforms. The court's findings have therefore put the spotlight not just on individual pieces of content, but on the technology and business decisions sitting behind them. It will be interesting to see the outcome of what happens here for the world of social media, which is a world that all of us who do podcasting utilize for discoverability, promotional. For those people that don't know what discoverability means, being seen basically, and then people hopefully following those links on these services and listening or watching your shows. Other social media services will undoubtedly be watching and hopefully responding accordingly. If not, then more fool them, quite frankly, because they may face the very same accusations and lose in court. I'm pretty sure that the once trillionaire and now downgraded to billionaire, Elon Musk won't want to be downgraded once again to a mere multimillionaire. On Sunday, the 2nd of August, Stephanie Fuccio posted on Substack that only after all of these years has she found out that the band known as Yaz in America was called Yazoo everywhere else in the world, and that the lead singer was Alison Moyet, using her nickname Alf. As an extra to that, which Stephanie didn't mention, Alison's debut album was named Alf. Now, did I do my research to find out if it had a different name in the States? I did, and the title was the same in the US. And by the way, that album includes the superb songs Love Resurrection, Invisible, and All Cried Out. I know this has nothing to do with podcast, but it did something with my brain because I have a head filled with musical trivia, which can bore some people to tears at times, I know. And things that seem obvious to me can occasionally niggle at me when people either don't know or that the information that they do know isn't quite right. It's why I have issues with films based on musical acts that have inaccuracies, like the films The Doors and Bohemian Rhapsody. So many inaccuracies in both. But I'll leave that there. On Monday, Frank Graciopi wrote on Substack about the great news of the International Advisory Board for Eurowaves that will help push European podcasting across the globe. In the episode of Podmastery that came out on Monday the 3rd of August, Neil Veglio spoke more on the subject of people being told about the consistency is key myth. He says not to worry about it and just make sure that you are comfortable with what you are doing. Also, if you don't push yourself to think of the whole thing work-wise that you have to do and just concentrate on making one episode and then putting that out, it might be easier for you. Take rest. Okay? On Tuesday, Frank Graciopi posted a great review of the podcast American Afterlife, a superb fictional series based on the deaths in Venezuela. It is available on his Substack. Earworthy. On Tuesday, I saw a Substack post from Stephanie Fuccio that asked the question, create or be a perfectionist? She is right that you have to allow yourself to just put out the creativity as it comes out. I'm going to use another musical tangent here as an example. Continuing the script. As an example of this from my own side, Paddy McAloon, the songwriter, musician and lead singer of the band Prefab Sprout, is famous in the songwriting world and the music world to have written and recorded one heck of a lot of songs. But he says that they are just not ready. His manager disagrees with him and says that it's because of Paddy's perfectionism that allegedly 7 or 8 albums haven't been released. His perfectionist slant won't allow him to put out the material that is there, which I think is bound to be great. I also think that Stephanie will like that example because of her love of 80s pop music greats. Prefab Sprout, everybody. King of Rock and Roll, Cars and Girls, Hey Manhattan, Jordan the Comeback. Amazing songs. Another post from Stephanie on Tuesday was wonderful, and I will just read that directly and leave it with you. In podcasting, people often spend the early episodes talking themselves through what the show is becoming. The themes, interests, and real direction are usually already there, even before the host can name them clearly. Sometimes the best way to understand a podcast is simply to go back and listen to yourself. Among the many points discussed in the episode of... I didn't put anything in there. Edit. Among the many points discussed in the episode of In and Around Podcasting from Tuesday the 4th of August was a description of what is going on with the AMP Accords and the IAB with their part in this as well. The AMP Accords, according to Rob Walch, are guides, technically, that are being looked at by the IAB and by the podcasting industry. They are not like the Ten Commandments as such. They are guidelines that are being discussed at present by those in charge of the world of podcasting. So that was an interesting point that some independent podcasters might not know about. On Wednesday, we saw the newsletter from John McDermott once again on Substack. John finally sarcastically told us the truth of what a podcast really is, and then commented on the story of the Times Spotify skip forward option for premium users. John also then gave us a superb list of his recent listening, which has apparently been made smaller because there have been less episodes released of the podcasts that he follows. One of the shows he spoke of may well have been Pods Like Us, because I forgot to tag what season and episode the last Pods Like Us Chronicles was last weekend, and that did not help a lot. I will just say that. As an aside, I apologise to anyone who was expecting an episode of Pods Like Us on Wednesday as well. I was working on the edit of a difficult recording with Phil Better, the podcast guru, so to speak, or the podcast mogul, as he is known, because that was done in 4 different records, I think, because of signal issues. So that is a bit of a edit and a half. On Thursday, there was a piece on Substack posted once more by Frank Graciopi about the show In and Around Podcasting, now hosted by Rob Walch and Elsie Escobar, 2 legends in podcasting, both of whom have appeared on Pods Like Us, incidentally. On Thursday, we also got an update from Stephanie Fuccio about her experiments with the show notes and seeing how they changed the interest in her show, Geopats, which hasn't had a new episode for a few years. It is a fascinating read, so go over to Stephanie's Substack page and follow that journey. Subscribe. Friday saw Tony Doe releasing the newsletter version of Into the Podverse, and I've just realised that I haven't mentioned anything from the podcast version of Into the Podverse. There was a mention of Chief Ochuko launching a new podcast, as well as Podground receiving funding to continue helping independent podcasters, and the launch of the Treasury Professionals podcast. He also mentioned about Elsie Escobar having celebrated being in the podcasting world now for 20 years, which is a great thing. We are all the better for that, trust me. As well as that, yes, Tony, I too was surprised that no black woman was mentioned in the Forbes list of the highest earning people in podcasting. I was so surprised that Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama aren't in that list. Go and read Tony's newsletter on Substack because there is so much more in there, and listen to the podcast Into the Podverse. Friday also saw Neil Veglio release a bonus episode of Podmastery, which, surprise, surprise, was about the shenanigans over at Spotify with their skip forward option. Ooh, I've not spoken about that much, have I? I'm looking forward to the continuation of this subject that he has lined up for us on Monday, the 10th of August, where he has some interesting options moving ahead that sound interesting. Making your show less skippable is a fabulous idea. But that is just one of the gems that is in that episode, I am sure. That's going to be a cracking episode. Now, not particularly a podcast thing as such, but on the morning of this episode's release, which is late again, there was a fascinating post on Substack from the writer Paul D. Brazil, who I follow on there, and I have a couple of his books as well. His post, I think, could make for an interesting subject as either a podcast episode or an entire podcast series. Maybe. The subject, you ask? Actors who have had songs named after them. It is indeed a good deep dive if you want to check it out. After the sign out, you will hear a trailer from one of the podcasts that had one of its creators taking part in the July month of podcast prompts for podcasters that was organised by Ariel Nissenblatt and the people at Mercury. So with that, I wish all of you podders the best. Pods Like Us is available anywhere that podcasts can be found, and all of the links to the social media and email are available on the opening page of themarvzone.org. The show is distributed and sponsored by rss.com, and we thank them for their support. Please rate and review the show on the platform that you are listening or viewing the episode on. All feedback is gratefully received, as it helps to know if there is anything that needs to be looked at. Thank you for listening, and I hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us Chronicles.
Keep the Flame Alive is the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. Every week, join your Olympic aunties, Jill Jarris,
Go ball, I'm gonna go and see it, go ball,
and Alison Brown,
I am a Swedish Viking,
for interviews that are smart.
How do you plan the strategy for each round?
Fun.
You have skates. Do you wear socks?
And ask the questions you know you want to ask.
Is there ever a moment where you just looked at these guys and thought to yourself, what am I doing on this mat?
We cover the Olympics and Paralympics like no one else.
What was going on with all of this cleaning of the balls? We had the princess of the pool, we had the flying fish, we had the silver bullet, and the beast.
Find Keep the Flame Alive at flamealivepod.com or on your favorite podcast app.
I saw them all. I stayed up and then woke up and watched more.
And until next time, keep the flame alive.
This is why I love the Olympics.